Let me help somebody. How can you work on a person's heart when you really don't know what's in their heart? God is the only one that knows the heart. And what happens a lot of time is that we keep telling people what's going on with us physically, but really they can't solve it spiritually. And I want to tell somebody today that only God can solve our spiritual need. If you're here today and you say, I know that I've been down, but now I need God to bring me back up. The problem we have is that we make the situation worse and more than it ought to be. We make it a problem instead of God solving it. What do you mean? You got to understand that every problem is nothing but a problem. Because that's really what a problem is. It's nothing but a problem. So the next time you can't work it out, give it over to the Lord. That's what happened in this text. You got to understand, here we have a king by the name of Hezekiah. He was in business, but something happened. Hezekiah, he inherited a business left by the forefathers that was a corrupt business. And can I tell somebody today that you got some folk in business, that's all they do is in business to tear you down. They're in business to corrupt you. But Hezekiah said, I knew what the forefathers had, but it was the wrong things, because his father was in the wrong business. But Hezekiah was trying to make things right for God. And so here he comes. God raises him up to be a man of God. And so Hezekiah said, now I got to make sure that everything is done the right way. In his early years of kingship, Hezekiah reopened and cleansed the temple. Why? Because the temple, it was corrupt. In other words, the church was corrupt. And just when we tell somebody today that you have a whole lot of folk that are still corrupt. The enemy is trying to corrupt your mind, to keep you on the outside when God wants you on the inside. And so here now, Hezekiah said, I've got to reopen and cleanse out the house of God. And let me tell everybody today, sometimes God needs a house cleansing to clean up some mess and get some things in order. And just let me tell you today that there comes a time when we also want order in the house of God. You all not want anything to go any kind of a way. You all not want anybody to just be doing anything. You ought to want holy people that love God, people that want to do right on the Lord's side, that's trying to stay on the Lord's agenda. And I tell all of you today that has came into this ministry and want to be a part of what we're doing, stay in business. Don't let nobody keep you out of business. You tell them that I'm in business for the Lord, because God has been super good to me. He has brought me to where I am now. Is there somebody here today? No. Had it not been for God, you would have been out of business a long time ago. But thanks be to God that He didn't let that happen. He just kept you in reserve. He kept you, in other words, He kept you shielded from the enemy's trap. He built a hedge around you where nobody could get to you. And Hezekiah is saying that I need to cleanse the temple. So he made a promise. He cried out to God, whatever you need me to do. Hezekiah said, I'm willing to do it. Now Hezekiah is in a position he couldn't turn back. And I want to tell us today is that whenever you get on the Lord's side, don't let the enemy turn you back. Yes, Hezekiah continued to teach the people to follow the great I am. Hezekiah said, if I'm going to start a new business, the first thing I must do is tear down the old business. And that's what he began to do. And he had to tear down the frame of mind that the people were in. And can I tell somebody today that if you're going to have a new way of thinking, you got to tear down your old way of thinking, because your old way will keep you from pressing forward in the sight of God. So he trusted God and often asked God to help him to lead the people. And that's what I like about Hezekiah. He didn't think it was about him. And when you move yourself out of the way and say, God, it's not about me, but it's all about you. And God will step in and tell you everything is going to be all right. He's now walking in the power of God. Listen to what happened. His attitude changed. His mind is renewed. He's a man now on a mission. Come on, somebody. And reading this text and studying this text, Hezekiah knew that something had to take place. And he knew that everything that was around him was corrupt. But just because things around you are corrupt don't mean you have to be corrupt. Just because people around you think that think it's all about them, don't you let that get in your way, because God is looking for somebody that will stand up and say that I'm going to stay on the Lord's side. In reading, I discovered that Hezekiah, he could have stayed there and been a slave, but Hezekiah knew that I had to get back in the business. And can I tell somebody that's here right now